This is Shine 309, presented by Fly Square Media. I'm your host, Dylan Elliott, and today's guest is an ambassador for the McLean County Chamber of Commerce. She's on the board of the Child Protection Network. She's also a member of the Central Illinois Communication Association. She's a former VP of Sales at the Pantograph. She's the owner of Omnia, which is a unique solution for all things marketing. She's also an owner of what might be my favorite, Eat Local Bloomington Normal. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Mrs. Amanda Jones. Hi, Amanda.
Hi. That made me sound like way like the build-up, the suspense of like, who is it?
Right. We're dialing it in. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how I want to present guests and how we're going to do this.
That was an aside. So, hi, how are you?
No, yeah. So we had like a 15-minute conversation before that intro. I might leave that in there just because we're figuring it out. We're hammering it out and we're talking and we shared some good stuff there. But at the same time, we might keep it formal and tight. So who knows if they'll even hear what that was.
That's fine. However it pieces together or whatever.
Yeah. So we were talking just a moment ago about Eat Local.
We were.
And so what's your news with Eat Local? What do you got going on with that?
So I launched, I have to look up the exact date, but I launched it about 2 years ago in, I think it was late February. And so if I can stick on track, it'd be really cool if I did it on the anniversary, but I'm redoing this site. So I wanted this site to, be a directory, be a place that you could find all of this stuff. And when I went to build it, I built it all myself, and so I could build it with, the tools I had and the knowledge that I had, which is, a little bit. And it just doesn't have the functionality to be as useful as I want it to be. And so I've searched over time, and so I've got it now where I can have it set up so that it can do everything that I want it to do, which I think will be really cool. So right now you can go and I like it because it's still the hub that has all the restaurants. So you can go and you can find everything, and people are like, I've never heard of this place. Like, that's my whole thing, is like trying to get it so people aren't like, oh, I've never heard of this. So right now it has that, and you can go and you can find that. A lot of what I do is like news articles, there's events, there's job listings, but everything is very siloed and not connected. So the new site, you'll be able to it has like a way more intuitive search, and then everything can be connected. So if I've got a job from restaurant A, it can be tied to restaurant A's page. If restaurant A is having an event, it can be on their page. So it can be a very like any other site that you might go to, very like if you're going to go to Google and you're going to find all of this stuff and you're going to find the map and you're going to find all the information, like that's all going to be there. And then we'll have all that local information with it too. It's hard to explain because it's not done yet. And I've, spent hours just putting the formatting together and the functionality and making sure that works. And then the next step is getting the 400 and something restaurants.
It seems like quite the task. And that was my next question. And so while you're looking forward to the relaunch or the rebrand of the website, so behind the scenes you're laying all the infrastructure in and like you're building it, and then now you got to like populate the pages or
yes.
I'm
not even to the point yet where I've got to I have like a couple test pages in there, so they can have menus online. It can have, I'm really excited because I think it can be what I was hoping it, would have been this past 2 years. But I got to a point where I wanted to launch it way back in the day, and it's like, hey, get it out there even if it's not perfect, which is, not how I like to be, but it's like, it's been there for a couple of years. It's a resource. I had somebody the other day post on Facebook about, hey, here's my places I want to try in 2025. And they listed some places, and they're like, if anybody knows anything else I should try. And some person I didn't even know was like, hey, have you checked out this, website, Eat Local? And I'm like, this is so cool that, there's somebody else that's saying, hey, look at this. And I see that all the time, where people are like, oh, you should check out this as a resource. And over the holidays, like I did at Thanksgiving and Christmas, like what's open, and that is huge. And the website traffic from that is really good, which is amazing that it's got that traffic. But then it's like for New Year's, then I had people sending me messages or asking me like, hey, are you going to have a list for New Year's? And it's like, oh my God, I wanted to, but I was so busy with like my own, holiday stuff that I didn't get to. And it's like, okay, well, that's nice to know that people are missing that information if I don't have it there. But right now I kind of don't make any currently, and hopefully if I change it, I can monetize it. But currently, I don't make any money off of it. So for the past 2 years, it's been like a fun project that I do on the side.
I was going to ask that, but like I don't want to expose anything you don't want to. I'm like, we'll edit that out. But like I was curious, like, so you're not monetizing it? And that was a huge effort. How many restaurants?
There are. It's been a while since I counted, but over 400. I mean, and some of them aren't local. There's 15 Starbucks or whatever. So some of that goes in there, but there are a lot that are local. And but it's sort of twofold as to how I put it together. So I put it together as I want it to be, obviously a business effort. Like, hey, here's something that I can do that we could put together that could be beneficial. And then there's like the community piece of it. Like, I want this to be a resource for the community. And in my mind, having it as that resource is more important to me, although that's like from a business perspective sort of silly, where you're like, you just can't do this for fun. But making sure that it's there and it's functional and that it works. And so from the business perspective, I think that there's a lot that they're like, hey, I want to launch this and I want to start charging people to have a listing on there, and you're not going to be there if you don't pay. And then that devoids the whole purpose of it. It's not comprehensive if everybody's not there. But then I thought, why, as you mentioned, I worked in advertising sales for a number of years. And so I know what that is and like what people are going to pay for. And there's absolutely no reason that anybody should pay to be listed on this site that people aren't utilizing or people aren't going to. And so I had to work on making sure that it was used first. And like I said, thankfully it is. And I think even fixing it could probably see, tremendous growth over this next year once I change it.
Eat Local hasn't seen its best day yet.
Right. And so now is the opportunity where then I can be like, look, you will be here, but you can have all these bells and whistles, like if you pay. And knowing that we're talking in restaurants, like, it to be affordable, not to say I'm going to charge you an arm and a leg, but like you want to be seen, and that hopefully there are less and less resources of places that you can go to find this. So if it's like this is the resource, well, yeah, you want to pay and you want to be there. So it sounds like lofty goals, and it's hard to in my mind, like get myself to think that, like, sure, everybody wants to be there and everybody's going to go there. But I think with the little growth that we've seen with it just being kind of meh, I'm excited. I think it'll be really cool. In my mind, if one person is like, I found this place that I tried that I had never heard of before, it's beneficial. Unfortunately, and I don't have the numbers, last year, it was interesting. There were, I want to say, and I could be wrong, 16 new places, like local places that opened up this year. There were also the same number that closed. And there are some, there are some that I really enjoyed, that it was sad to see them go. And it's like, can we prevent some of this from happening? And obviously, if it's like there's a place and like the food's terrible or the service is terrible or the whatever, like no matter how visible they are, that's not going to help it. But like the number one thing we see, or I see a lot when somewhere closes, is that people, and this is obviously like mostly what you see on social, but that people are like, I've never heard of it. I never knew that place was there. And it's like, the basis for all of it is like, that can't be an option. You have to at least know these places exist. And if I can do something to help with that, then that's great. And from there, it's like if I have these opportunities for businesses to pay to be a part of it and they want to do it, great. And if they're like, I don't want to do this because I don't see the value in it, well, then there's no value. I can't force somebody to think that there's a value in something. But I think, from that consumer perspective, hopefully if done the right way and done how I intend it to, that it will be. And I had done some stuff in the past, and I want to look. I do not want it to be advertising heavy. And so you're going on there and you're wanting to find what you do, and it's like overrun with ads. I absolutely don't want that to be the case, but I do want to explore options too, which I think there's some where other businesses can be visible or do sponsorships or so we can get money from other industries, knowing that the restaurant industries do not have large budgets. So how can we, get other people to support, knowing that like this is also a community resource. So
it's not monetized yet, but then I get it. It's a resource. You got over 400 restaurants on it. And I get it too. It's not like pay to play or you're not on it, because then it kind of voids the resource of it. So is there and then maybe this is behind the scenes, you don't want to share this publicly, but is it maybe like a tier option? Like, well, everybody will be on it, but then like you said, the bells and whistles, like you can be on it and be registered, but if you want to have this kind of, like if you want your announcements or you want to have job openings, then you do have to pay for that kind of resource.
Yes. Yeah, so that's what and I had put some other packages together before, and I actually have some people that have, like I said, I haven't wanted to charge anybody to be on it yet because I'm not happy with how it is in its current state. And so once I am, though, that I'll be like, absolutely, you should pay to be on here. But there would be different tiered packages. But to your point that yes, everybody has to be there. Otherwise it's not comprehensive. And so it doesn't work. And so if anything, at least it's like got your name and your website and whatever to say, here, look, you can see that this place is available. And anywhere that's local, we'll at least have some photos and description and enough information. But now there's the opportunity to have, so much more that you could even, post your specials. We could do special exclusive offers. I've got an email list together, so I send out some emails. We've got social pages. We've got other ways that we can help share that information too. And one of the things, I do have some clients now through Omnia that I do marketing for that are restaurant or food related businesses. And so there's an opportunity for these restaurants to also have, full marketing packages. So to say, I need somebody to help me with this one particular thing, or I need somebody to help, all of our marketing. Most restaurants, especially the smaller ones, don't have a particular person dedicated to marketing. So there's that opportunity, to help in a fully robust way. And to say wouldn't this be great if I have one person that can do everything we need to do? They can update all the stuff on Eat Local. They can update when we're open and closed on Google. They can respond to our reviews. They can do our social for us. They can help us come up with creative campaigns, help us design our menus. I mean, X, Y, and Z at an affordable rate. So those options are there. Just, if I ever get the point that I want to tell people that they're there as options. I've just, been really busy on the Omnia side with the marketing. I've been fortunate that side of my business has been very busy, that I really just haven't been able to push and have that focus on Eat Local. And I'm hoping for 2025, I want to pivot and be able to do that. But again, it's like, people are paying me to do work for them, on the marketing side. And so it's hard to go, I want to work on this project.
No, yeah.
So.
No, I get that. And then I like that too. So again, we're beating a dead horse here, but yeah, it's a resource. You got all this stuff on it. And I totally, while you're saying it, and I'm like, totally monetize that. I get that from a business perspective. And then I also see it too that now that it's been in motion for 2 years, you have that data. You could bounce the numbers off. I'm like, look, we're getting this many unique visitors every month. Mm-hmm. And like that's what with launching kind of this podcast thing, like if I go to try to monetize that one day, like doing it first pro bono and doing it first just to bring awareness to what everyone's doing is one thing. But then once you do it and once you have that data and you can show people like, well, here are the numbers and here's what it looks like and here's what it can actually do. Like I see the value in that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there's a lot that do it the other way around where they're like, I've got to sell people on this and will, sell people on a program and say, here's what you can be up on this site and you can have all these listings. It's like, that's great. But if 4 people saw it, like that is not worth their money. And I don't feel comfortable doing that. So again, that's like, if I'm going to put this together and it's going to have, a cost behind it, that cost is going to be a value. And I very well feel, and the way that I would structure it is like that value that you're going to get is going to be a lot more than I'm even asking you to pay. And the people, that jump in kind of early on are going to see the benefits, because if it, does what I'm hoping it will do, if we're on, coming up to year 2 with it, or this, being around 2 years when it's been like, and a side project, in like 2 years from now, when it's like, hey, this is a main project and it is going good, like, I wish I would have jumped in at the beginning, because those people are, you're going to get those lowest rates. I have people that
crypto.
I have people that I do, with my marketing stuff where it's like, I've worked with them for so long, so they pay what they did, 4 or 5 years ago, and it probably shouldn't be that, but I'm like, you were here for me when I was starting off, and I was, didn't even know what I was doing and pretending like I knew, and so, that hasn't either changed at all or very little, which, at certain times I'm like, okay, that should be way different. But
No, I have a similar relationship. Like one of my oldest clients who became pretty good friends now, like they still get almost the same rate as early on. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to just jack the price up on them. One, because I don't want to change that relationship. And two, they were feeding me back when nobody was.
Right.
And they've kept the lights on. They've kept the ship floating. So why am I all of a sudden going to try to switch it up on them and be like, oh, well, now you got to pay to play? It's like we can maintain what we're doing because it's not hurting me to keep doing what I'm doing for them. And it maintains the relationship and it just keeps it going. So
right.
I get that.
And I know I could probably with all of them take it and be like, hey, it's this now. And they'd be like, okay. And, not the fear of like, oh, if I raise the rates, they're going to be like, I'm out of here. Because, again, that value is definitely there. But it's that, like you said, like, feed me when, what did you say? But very true. Like when I was starting out and you're starting and you're like, oh, my goodness, I hope somebody wants to hire me.
Yeah, right.
That's who's around then.
And that's what's interesting from marketing and video production. Like when you're in business for yourself, pretty much you're kind of offering a product or a service. You're bringing value to somebody. You're either giving them something they enjoy or making their life better, or you're optimizing some sort of efficiency. And I tend to say that like business to business, industry to industry, it's different with a lot of the nuances, but there's so many parallels. There's so many things that are similar. You're bringing a product or a service to the public and you're trying to help people's lives. Mm-hmm. But so how do you stay on top of it? I don't want to just keep going in circles with the Eat Local, but I want to dive in a little bit more on it. How do you stay current with so many restaurants in this? And before I even get into that, maybe you can shine some light on this. I've always heard that in Bloomington Normal, they have the highest amount of restaurants per capita per people. And then I recently saw even a debate online. People are like shooting that down. Like there's no evidence or there's no data for that. But like, was that in a magazine or something somewhere? Or is that just like general, is that an urban legend or
I almost think I can't really be both, but I think that was something years ago. And so it must have been published somewhere, but it was maybe like in the 90s or something, and that was a thing. And now obviously like our population has changed, so all of those numbers have changed, and obviously other areas have changed. So there's nowhere that I know of, and I've tried to look for that before, that states that.
Yeah, you're in that space. I know you've heard that.
To a fact, and so that is kind of an argument. Like, is it or is it not? But I think like clearly, for the number of people we have a lot of restaurants. And when I say there's and I probably should have looked up the exact number, when I say there's 400 and something, that also is taking into account neighboring towns. So like you're over in Hayworth, so it counts the places in Hayworth, Downs, Lexington, Leroy. Those might be all. I'm probably forgetting something. Like Colfax, there's maybe one random restaurant out there.
Colfax has a restaurant? No, I'm kidding.
But so anything that's sort of like that surrounding area. We don't get out to, Peoria or Champaign. I mean, that's like a whole separate beast. But any of those other small areas, they're going to draw a lot of their people from obviously Bloomington Normal. So wanting them to be visible on there as well. But I lost track of what I was saying.
Talking about the saturated market.
But obviously for the population of Bloomington Normal to have 400 and something restaurants, and again, some of those are those chains that have a lot, but that's definitely a lot of restaurants per person. So is it the highest? I don't know. I mean, it's the same as when you're like, this is the tallest building. And I think like Sears Tower, which is not even whatever it's called now, like the eighth tallest or something now. It's like nowhere near the tallest, but you're like, oh yeah, it's like the tallest building. No, so. And
then even part of it for doing this early on, I'd start saying something that's like a half-baked idea or a statistic that I kind of know. I read something once and I'm like, I need to be careful what I say or how you frame it is everything. If you're like, this is fact, well, no. If you're like, well, there's an idea, it's a different way to frame it. But there's like that age-old thing that 75% of statistics are made up on the spot, and it's like, well, this half-assed data.
Did you just make that up?
I actually looked it up, and depending on what you read, it's anywhere from 75 to 86% or something. But like a lot of times, people will just make up statistics on the spot to support their argument, or sometimes it'll be just that, like, well, I read something 6 months ago, I don't remember exactly what it was, but yeah 80% of all restaurants this or that, right? So but yeah, no, I'm like, being in this community, I've always heard that the most restaurants per capita, and then you're saying over 400, and we got like a roughly 100,000 people. And I would also tend to think that like if you can be a successful restaurant in this market, it's a great test market for it. When it's super saturated, if you can find success, you can go anywhere and run a successful restaurant. but I'm not in the industry, so I can't say that.
And I think there's something to be said for that too. Like, obviously, the purpose of it is to promote our locally owned and like local franchises. So there's a lot of businesses sometimes that people don't realize are a franchise, and so it's like you want to support those because those people live in this community also. But from a corporate standpoint, when there's corporate stuff opening, it's like, oh, another corporate chain, whatever. Like, that's not necessarily bad either, because it's saying like this market is somewhere that we want to be. So it's like, Raising Cane's is coming, and so that's like the hot new thing that's coming to town. And it's like when Portillo's, it's been years now, but when that came, that was like huge news, because it was like, this is a big deal to have this. And so it's when, whether it's restaurants or stores, when these bigger chains come to town, I think it's really nice. It's saying like Bloomington Normal is a market that we want to be in. And so, a lot of it is supporting the local community, but it's doing whatever we can to support the community as a whole. And so if these corporate entities are going to come in and bring tax dollars and whatever, like, so be it. Come on in.
It's funny you mentioned Portillo's. I remember when they're opening, I was really excited for it. And what we tend to do as a family, and me, not me collectively, but what we do, somewhere's new, we like it, we'll eat there a whole lot, and then we get burnt out on it, and we don't go back for months. And it's like, oh, we need to put it back in rotation, and you have it again. Or you'll have like one bad experience at a restaurant, and you're like, ugh, you don't go back for a while. But yeah, we did that at Portillo's definitely, because the only time I would eat Portillo's is when we go to Chicago. And it's the one that was Portillo's and Brunelli's, I think it is. Do you know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. Got the Italian one there too. And I used to love their fettuccine Alfredo with the chicken. And it's like, well, do I want the Alfredo or do I want the Portillo's? And so when we had one in Bloomington.
Too many choices.
So when they brought Portillo's to Bloomington, I was excited for it. So when's this Raising Cane's supposed to open? I might have heard that. Now that you mentioned, I'm like, oh yeah, I think I heard something about that.
Put me on the spot. I forget. Well, they tore down the building that Beauty Brands was in to build it. And so construction's just going on now. And so I think like late spring.
Is that over there summer. By Von Mauer? Mm-hmm. Was that the place? There was somewhere that recently, I might have just heard something click over there. There was something that recently, not recently, in the last couple of years though, they built a building just for it and they opened it. And I think it's that same one.
It's possible. I mean,
that was like that they're tearing it down. Like, why are you tearing down a new construction?
Yeah, it seemed. I mean, that's a crazy area. There's a lot of stuff there. But again, if they're that's like a growing chain, and if they're like Bloomington is where you want to come, and we're going to tear something down just to put up what we need, like, okay, they're seeing something. And like I said, like, Eat Local is trying to support the local restaurants, but for me, like you mentioned, I'm a chamber ambassador. I'm very active in the chamber. Like, anything that we can do just to support the community as a whole is important to me. And so, I'm like, come here, build here, fill houses. I think now we're like running out of houses. It's like, okay, great.
So you mentioned being a chamber ambassador. How long have you been doing that?
So now I'm coming up on, I think this is going to be my 4th year. I sort of lose track of time. I think I've done it, we're 3 years already. And then so this will be year 4.
And what all's involved in that? Is it just like you're encouraged to show up to events, or like, is there any like emails you're doing or anything on the administrative side? Or are you literally just there to serve as an ambassador and like be support in the community? Or what all does the role of the ambassador entail?
Really just, and I'll probably explain this wrong, and the chamber will be like, that's not it. No. But so the chamber staff the chamber in McLean County is very large and very active, and the staff is small. So there's a lot of things on everybody's plate. So the ambassadors serve as sort of an extension to be of assistance to the chamber. So when we have events like Business After Hours or any chamber events, we're there if there's new people, or just to interact, make sure that people feel welcome. We serve on committees a lot if there are different things happening within the chamber. As new people join, an ambassador always gets connected with somebody new that joins the chamber, and so, which is really nice. And that's always been the case. Even when I joined, I had an ambassador that reached out to me. So it's like right away you have somebody that's a connection. So really, I started to be an ambassador. So I joined. This will help me think of my dates a little bit better. So I started Omnia in January of 2020. So I'm coming up on an anniversary there. And one of the first things I did was join the chamber. I'm like, I'm a small business. I need to, join the chamber and be part of this. And then COVID hit, and then they're like, just kidding. Like, there's no events or anything or whatever. And so then when everything got going back, I'm like, okay, I want to go to stuff. And then I always was like, well, I need to, try to sell stuff and make money in businesses. And that sort of fell to the bottom of the list. And so I was like, okay, what can I do that I can make myself become a little bit more active? And I was like, well, I'll try to sign up for ambassador. Maybe, maybe that'll keep me dedicated. And so it was more sort of self-serving to start with. And so I signed up, and so then it was like, oh, hey, I have to go to these things now. I have to force myself to go to these. And, knowing what I know now, I would not miss them anyway. But
what do you know now?
I just that it's very important. Just that the chamber, the chamber has been a huge part of, not even necessarily, I've gotten business from like other chamber members, but not even that, but being sort of that, sort of lifeline and help and connections in the community, and having a little bit more understanding as to like what's going on in the community, and how we can support local businesses. And the ambassadors is one piece, and I think the other is, which we've got our solopreneurs group. So the group that is solo business owners is you and I and a whole bunch of other people that do what we do every day and don't really have a team or other people that understand what we do. Even at home, there's a difference of, only a solo business owner understands what another solo business owner does. Sure. And so to have that group has been a huge resource. And so I'm a co-chair of that group.
We should have put that on your intro. I forgot you're the co-chair. She's also the co-chair.
I forgot.
Of the solopreneur group.
And that group, initially, when that was an option, like, oh, you can go if you're a solopreneur. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, I'm certainly not going to try to sell my marketing services to other solo business owners. And I don't have time for that. I need to go, be connected with big fish and whatever. And I don't even remember when somebody's like, okay, you should come to this. I'll check it out. And, immediately I was like, okay, this group is great. I really, like I said, just from the support. And we actually have, made a lot of different, hey, I'm here because I know you, as part of, being that group, but made connections and be resources. And that group is very, very good about like, do you know somebody that can help with this? And like making referrals or doing those things, not because we feel like we have to, not, there's some of those groups where it's like, you have to make referrals or whatever. And I am not a fan of those, but this is because we know that like these people here are genuinely like good at what they do and good resources and good people. And, some of the people that I'll get emotional and cry. I don't want to, but like that group is super important. And I think, we had somebody, you may have been here, but that came to their first meeting just recently. And every time somebody comes to the first meeting, it's funny because sometimes the meeting is like kind of derailed and we're all over the place. And you think from like an outsider perspective, what does this seem like? And are people going to be like, oh my God, this is nuts? And so I always, when they come back to meeting too, I'm like, oh good, they made it back. But somebody that came to one recently for the first time and then was at our holiday social and made the comment about how they could tell just right away like what a strong group it was and how much of a resource that they think it could be. And the thing about that group too is we're talking about solo business owners that work for themselves. So it's like everything that you're doing that's extra is taking away from time that you could be like working on your business and making any money. So these people that are coming to this are dedicating that hour out of their day once a month. And it's hard for people to do. And so for people to say, this is valuable enough for me to stop what I'm doing and put this on my calendar to come every month, I think is huge and says a lot about it. And it's just, anybody I talk to that's new, that's a solo business owner, like I try to encourage to be a part of it. And I got way off topic of being an ambassador, but ultimately is that the chamber I think is a very, very good resource. And even for people, those that aren't solo business owners, there's a small business group. I'm part of another group, a boss group, which is business. I always forget what it's called, but it's essentially like there's a small business roundtable. That group is kind of filled with certain industries, and so this one is for like business owners that maybe have a staff but are looking for additional resources. But there's just so many different ways to be able to connect through the chamber.
You
which I think
said
is
so
great.
many things I wanted to piggyback off of on that rant. First of all, when you said the groups, right? So I only joined the chamber in April of 23. So I'm getting ready to hit my 2-year anniversary of being a member of the Chamber of Commerce. And then with my, I don't want to say ignorance, but my lack of knowledge in that space, hearing the word chamber, I associated with some sort of government. And I was like, oh, it's a private company, but they're all over. Every community has their little chamber of commerces. And I assumed it would be a fantastic resource. I knew it would be an opportunity to network, which I want to circle back around to. But you mentioned the internal groups within it. And again, when you're living off word of mouth and you're trying in a small way, then you're like, I want to step out of my comfort zone and start networking, start doing Chamber of Commerce. I found that in this space, there's a bunch of groups. There really are. And it's like there's Rotaries, and then there's solopreneurs, and there's all these different groups. And I've visited quite a few, and similar to what you said, some of them are like they require you to do referrals, or you have to be there every week. And that's why I really like the solopreneurs, because it is low pressure and you don't have to show up. But then when you do, like you said, it's a great group. And I really feel like I've gotten authentic support, and I've made some of my best connections there. And it's like I look forward to going to see that group and talk to people. And when people enter or join the chamber, like Joe's Lawn Care, Joe just joined, I told him I do go to solos. Like, it's my favorite group of people. And then I don't know, it's not marketing or branding. Yeah, it's my favorite group. It literally is. I enjoy coming and hearing you guys. And like you said, week to week, you don't know, or month to month, you don't know what you're going to get. I literally thought when we were going to sit down and it would be like, so what's the entrepreneurial journey like? Like, what lessons have you learned? And I thought it would be like, I don't want to say less formal, but the very first one I went to is when Chad gave a presentation on AI. I didn't know what to expect. We go in, we sit down, and he sits and talks about AI for an hour, and then everybody gets up and leaves. And I was like, is this what it's about? And then I showed up again the next month, and then it was way more conversational. And then I think within my first 3 or 4 meetings, one of the times, 3 or 4 people started crying, and it got real emotional. And I was like, this is unique, and it's interesting, and it's a good group, and I like solos for a lot of reasons.
That one was someone that I had asked to come as first meeting, and I'm like, oh my goodness, everybody cried, but no, I like it. It doesn't have, so sometimes it has that more structured format where it's like we're talking about a particular thing, or people are presenting on something, but then again, that it's outside of those 4 walls and outside of that hour, that it's like, here are people that I can connect with or ask a question or whatever. And I think what you said, you mentioned the word authentic, and that's 100% real, where some of it, it's like there's groups and we say we go to them and we belong to them and blah, and you go through the motions, but that's 100% like those people are there because they want to be there. Those people interact with each other because they want to interact with each other. And yeah, it's just
something else I see about those groups too. Like, you'll go and it'll be the presentation, and then we'll have the kind of formal discussion. But then it's once the meeting's adjourned, then it's those little subgroups, and everybody hangs out afterwards, and you got that extra 15 minutes. Like, sometimes that's the very best part of the meeting, is hanging out afterward and catching up or follow up. Like, I didn't get back to you on that email, and then it's like, oh, we finally got FaceTime. And I went to the ribbon cutting yesterday, and I saw 3 different people that I've needed to have FaceTime with, and I'm like, good. I just ran into them. I didn't have to make an appointment or let's have a meeting and do coffee. It's like, cool. I just ran into you at the ribbon cutting, and I got a chance to catch up with you and have that quick FaceTime. And it's like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and do that coffee, or let's follow up about that meeting there, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
right.
So it's good. I like that. And also, you mentioned within your house being an entrepreneur versus, I guess, if your other half isn't, or it's different being in the headspace or in the company of other entrepreneurs versus folks who, not to knock anyone's gig, but when you're in a box or you work for a company and you have a 9 to 5 or you have a certain professional experience, it's very different than the entrepreneurial experience and the entrepreneurial journey. You got to think so outside of the box. You got to think different levels ahead. And I don't know how to describe it. When you said it, reminded me of that. I'm like, yeah, sometimes I have conversations with folks who don't do what we do, and it's different when they're in a structured environment. And it's like, you can't think outside of the box, or you don't do the marketing. You're a cog in a machine versus being the entire machine. And there's so much going on, and it's hectic and it's crazy and it's hard. And then speaking of that, when you did your Eat Local ribbon cutting, I debated whether or not to bring this up, but I'm bringing it up. When you said your bit, you said when you started Omnia, I don't want to misquote you here, but you said something about it being easy or easier than you expected. And I was sitting there like, easy. What part of entrepreneurship is easy? And do you remember saying that?
I don't remember saying that. I don't remember yesterday though.
I'm putting
so
you on the
that's
spot.
not-
I'm sorry. No, they just stood out to me, and I was like, well, good for her. Like, you're finding success in it, and you're hitting your stride with it, and you found ease in it, and like, some days, some months are easier than others, though. Like, yeah, sometimes just business is coming in and leads are coming, and like, this is great, and other times it's feast or famine. It's like, what are we gonna do this month to get word out, and how are we gonna get some new clients? So.
I think, and probably, yeah, I don't remember saying that. But if it was,
Maybe I
if
shouldn't
it
have
was
said
like,
that.
hey, is that surprisingly without a lot of effort, being able to get business. And like I said, now I'd love to focus more on Eat Local, but I've got, I keep getting business on the other side, which is great, but I'm not actively like going out there and looking for it. It's, coming to me, which again is a great problem to have. But it's more now the like, oh, I want to focus on this, or oh, I need to do this, or
I reached a point last year where I got overwhelmed with commitments, and then it becomes like, okay, slow down. I don't need any more commitments. Now, how do I manage expectations so I'm not burning any bridges? And that's what, yeah, it's not every day going and pushing that same button in the office. Like, there's a lot to this, and it's tricky, but it's so rewarding too. So,
well, and I think, like what you said too, of like having conversations with people that are in other industries or other jobs, and definitely nothing to say, I had a corporate job for a while, and part of why I left that is like, I'm stressed and I'm working all the time and I'm doing whatever, and I still have that, so I haven't left that. But so there are, those jobs, and they require that different stuff. It's just as much as they would say like, oh, well, I understand what it would be like, to own your own business. Without them doing it, they wouldn't understand. And when I mentioned like being at home, and nothing against my husband, but like, he doesn't own his own business, so no matter how I would explain it, you're never truly gonna understand. If it's like, oh, I understand what, I have a sister, but if I didn't, I could see what it would be like to be an only child. Like, no, it's a totally different, until you're in that. And that's probably a terrible analogy, but something to say, nothing against, not saying necessarily that we work harder than the people in the corporate jobs, or we do whatever, but it's different, and that the only other people that are going to understand that are those people that are in that same space or have been in that same space. And they're, I would say, more so that you encounter a lot of people that they work for a company. And we've even had this with like chamber stuff sometimes too, where it's talking about, like paying for different things or whatever. Like, yeah, it's great if you work for, my company will pay for that. It's like, I am my company. Like, okay. But so it's just different. So that's why going back to like that group is, you're like-minded people.
and then even with that, there's different levels to it. We're solopreneurs versus the business owner who's got a staff of 100 people or something.
Right.
Like, even though he's an entrepreneur, he's playing at a different level and has different challenges than we're going to have. So
Absolutely.
from 22 to 23, my business doubled. And then from 23 to 24, it doubled again. And then I was so bold early 24. Is that right? 22 to 23, 23 to 24. Yeah, then early 24, I was like, my goal is to double it again, which was ambitious. And I did not. And sometime in the middle of 23, though, I was reflecting on it. I was like, kind of hitting my stride. I was like, I'm definitely full-time with it. I'm starting to make some money. Like, I'm proud of what I'm doing. And I was like, well, what changed? Like, what did I do that was different? And it wasn't like my marketing so much, because my quote unquote marketing kind of remained the same. I was doing word of mouth, my social media. I did a little bit of direct, like email, kind of reaching out to people kind of thing. And I got some traction from that. This year, I'm actually getting ready to launch an initiative where I'm going to do some direct mailers. And I have a whole industry I'm going to attack. And I got a plan in mind, and I'm going to follow up about that. But I guess the reason I'm bringing this up is, since we're talking about the chamber and solopreneurs and being an ambassador, what I feel like changed the most was my network. I feel like networking is in-person marketing. And when you just said that as an ambassador and being in the chamber, like, I feel like you maybe saw a correlation there that your business grew, and or part of it is you're the face of it. And now just people know who you are and know what you're doing. And so I guess I say all that to say that I think networking's equally as important as marketing is in so many ways. I don't know if one would outweigh the other. Do you have any input on that, or what do you think about that?
Well, as a marketing person, I'd love to say, oh, it's the marketing, but honestly, it's not. You're
It's both.
It's both. But those in-person referrals, or that word of mouth, and that's one of the things that there's probably a stat for that.
There's a stat,
The
yeah.
stat for
And I
that.
feel like that cosign matters because you can say all day, I'm great, and look at the value I bring. But when Jimmy over here cosigns and says, yes, Amanda's great, or her services provided this value, that has as much or more impact than what
Yeah.
you say about yourself ever will.
Well, and that's the thing. So like you want, if you're, it depends too, like who's giving you that referral. Is that somebody that I trust? But the things do work hand in hand. So it's like you want to, people do stuff differently, but if you refer somebody to me, like depending who you are, I might be like, okay, Dylan said this, but I'm probably going to go out there and I'm going to like check up on them and be like, okay, what else do I know about them, or who do I see, or have I heard of them? And so rather than, you know, you just naming some person I've never heard of, if you're like, oh, I name so and so, and I'm like, this is what I hear about them, this is what I know about them, this is whatever, and that's sort of that marketing that they do, you know, do work together. But yes, like I said, the majority of my business that I've gotten is from referrals, whether it be chamber referrals or other referrals, versus marketing. And I said this, I think maybe before the cameras were rolling, that like I am terrible about marketing my own business, and you know, it's like do as I say, not as I do. But in my mind, I'm like, well, that's not necessarily where I'm getting my business. And I don't, again, I'm limited on the time that I have. And so I'm like, I want to focus on eat local. I've got to do all this client stuff or whatever. If I don't necessarily need more business on the Omnia side, I'm not paying attention to actively marketing it and promoting it and whatever. And again, from the marketing side, I know that's a terrible, terrible thing to say. And I would love to do more, but it's those connections and those networks that somebody will say, somebody referred me to you, or hey, it's, you know, somebody that I know that is reaching out. So
you're the marketer that doesn't market herself, like the mechanic who doesn't work on his car,
yeah,
or the video guy who never does video. Yeah, like I rarely ever jump in front of the camera. I'm like, look at me, or I don't create my own promotional content. Often it's like, well, here's something I created for somebody else, but I'm trying to move more into that space too, do a little more self-promotion. Part of it's like I don't want to be all egotistical, like look at me, but there is a time and a place for that, and there is, I keep saying there's value in that. There's value in that though. Like your buddy Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary Vee's great at self-promoting, and I like his approach to a lot of things. But then part of it too, I've heard him be criticized for that. He stays on brand. And it's like, well, if you're the positive, inspirational guy, and all that ever comes out of your mouth is positive, inspirational stuff, sometimes it's like, do you really feel that way? Is it authentic, or are you just staying very much so on brand? But maybe it is. And like I get sometimes if you're on camera enough, and you share enough thoughts, if somebody wanted to go through and fine pick and scrutinize it, you're going to say something contradictory. Right. You're a human being. Like you have different thoughts and opinions on different things. Day to day, things might change over time. And that's part of why I was hesitant to do this. I've had this idea for a long time to be on camera and have conversations. And I'm like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, or I don't want to come across the wrong way, or like be misunderstood. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know, it's corny to say, it was like that's living in fear. And I don't want to sit back and be fair. Like, I don't want to say the wrong thing. Like, I want to do this.
Somebody's looking to pick at you and be like,
going to
anyway,
right? Yeah. So, and like, I want to do this for what I feel like's the right reasons. Like, back to what I said with the legacy of this. Whether or not this is a great marketing opportunity, or this gets a bunch of views and people just think, wow, it's the most compelling conversation. To me, this is neat to have this conversation on video that I can look back on 10, 20, 30 years from now. I just think it's really cool to do. To have for myself personally, for any of my family members that would ever care, or just for your own personal legacy, I think is great.
Right. No, I think that's it. We could be like, oh wow, 5 people watched that, but we're like, well, we have it, you know.
Exactly.
And I think you bring up too, like, so I'm guilty of, you know, and I think, and like, not jumping back too much to like solopreneurs, but like that group that a lot of us, you know, or people that start businesses do it because they are passionate about it and like to do it. And so for me, it's like I didn't go into marketing because I want to talk about myself and how awesome I am. And people, sometimes I think people think I'm weird. So I don't operate like an agency does, and I don't self-promote. I don't share client information. And so and nothing against people that do, but there's stuff out there where it's like, here's our clients, check out our portfolio, here's work that we've done. And I don't have any of that. Even the clients that I have don't know who else I work with. It's not about me, it's about them. And so I want, you know, if they're looking at something that client is doing, that's that business that's saying that's that business that doing that, and not like, oh, Amanda does their marketing, Amanda is saying this, look at, you know, what we did. And so I think it's kind of weird, but it makes it hard then then if people are like, well, do you have examples of what you do or who do you work with? And I'm like, you know.
I feel like that's almost a unique approach. Not to say I didn't know that, but now that you mention it, you're right. You're not like Omnia, look at what we did for these folks. And I do like that, though.
I did decide, which I didn't do before, on the new Eat Local site that at the bottom it says, like, I forget exactly what I worded it, like, site created and managed by Omnia LLC or something, because I'm like, well, there's a way to sort of like tie these two together. If somebody's like, who put this site together? Like, well, I did over here. So I want to try to like cross promote those two where I can. But yes, it's not about me. And so, which makes it hard then if people are like, oh, well, what do you do? Like, you could think I do literally nothing.
Well, I feel like that's kind of part of the game though, right? Like, I'm the video guy, but I'm not just like, I'm the video guy. I'm like, well, I also work with these wonderful clients. It gives you like that cosign or that validation, and then people will see that and be like, oh, you work with all those other brands too. Like, you must be on the level. But like, if it's already your ship's floating anyway, you don't need to toot your own horn. So.
Yeah. But it's hard. It's like, I tell people like having Google reviews is really important for your business and responding to Google reviews. And like, so it'd be great if I was like, hey, client, will you write me a review? But then I'm like, I don't, it's weird because I don't want that, because I'm like, I'm not trying to promote who you are, and that like, I have it structured where instead of like, yes, I'm hired and I'm like this external business, but that I function very much as like I'm a part of your team. And so I'm going to, say a company hired a marketing person. That marketing person isn't going to take what they do for their job every day and be like, look at what we did. Look at what I did for this business. Like, you're not going to do that because you're an employee and you work there and that's just what you do. So I function sort of in that same way, in that same space, instead of being like, you're you and I'm me over here. Like, I'm connected with you as much as possible and like pretend like I work here.
And I think part of it like depends on where you're at with it and the relationship you have with the client. And then I got to not a lucky place, but I got to, it used to be anything I created, I would share it. Like, again, look at me, look what I'm capable of, looking for more work. And now I don't want to say I'm backlogged, but I got so much content that I created last year that I never posted, because now that need's not there necessarily. Like, I did a bunch of videos for several different companies. I don't have the bandwidth to be active on social to post every single one of them. Like, look at this video, look at that video. And then there's I had a couple of big opportunities where I had to sign NDAs for them. I'm not supposed to tell anyone I work for them. And the money's good enough and the relationship's good enough that to me it's worth it. Like, at the end of the day, am I doing this to toot my own horn to say, look at me and look what I'm doing? Or is it that I'm happy to be creating content and to be making a living doing it? So that's validation enough, or that's good enough for me. But at the end of the day, like, when I'm in the same room as the CEO and I'm in this big organization doing something really cool, it kind of sucks that I can't share it to say, look what I'm doing. This is so neat. Right. But then again, at the end of the day, like, I'm happy just to be doing it, and I don't need that external validation. But at the same time, it is fun to say, look what I'm doing, and to document that journey and share it. But it's not necessarily necessary.
Yeah.
It's interesting though.
No, and that's how, like, well, for me, it's like yes, like it's a business and you need to make a certain amount of money to, be sustainable and live and whatever. But like, bottom line is that like and this is sort of, so like the backstory of, I had my other job and it was corporate job, and I was like, I need to get out of, this. It's just a little bit too crazy, too corporate. We're not focused on what we need to be in kind of best interest. We're focused on, just making these sales and whatever. And so I started looking for other jobs, and I'm like, there's not really a ton that's out there in the marketing space. And my husband was actually the one that was like, well, why don't you just start your own business? And I'm like, nice. Oh no, I can't do that. That's crazy. And then the more I looked and there wasn't anything out there, and, I was like, I really need to get out of this job. And I thought, okay, maybe that's something to explore. And I decided to do that. And so when I started it, it's like, okay, what do I want to do? And there was sort of two things, is like, what do I want to do? I want to go in the marketing space. And it was kind of nice where I'm like, instead of going and working for one business, I could go and I could be the marketing person at one business. And then if I'm successful and I'm doing what I want to do, which is ultimately helping that business grow, I'm doing that and I'm helping one business. Where if I do what I'm doing and I work with a bunch, I can help these businesses grow, and it's multiple businesses. And so, if I'm successful, it's not about like the money that I've made, but it's finding like, did we help these businesses grow and do what they want to do? Like, I had lunch with somebody yesterday where it was like, you know, we went out and it was an amazing year, and like, thank you for being a part of it. And you were, you know, it's like, yes, this is why I you know, do what I do.
That's great. That's so rewarding, right?
It is.
That's like early on when I was doing video, it'd be like I was just excited to be making money doing something creative. And I was like, oh, like you'll pay me to make your promotional content or do a video for you. And it was kind of like, here you go. And then in the future, let me know if you need anything else. And then I try to learn more about business and learn, one, to help myself, but to help others. Like, and then again, I keep going back to like provide value, but it really is like, if I can just give you a video, cool. But if at the end of the day, I understand how you can use video as a tool to grow your business, if you can tell your story, if you can have a targeted marketing video for a specific service or a specific limited time deal or offer that you're doing, and we can have that conversation, and then we can discuss your distribution plan. That's a wildly different conversation or approach to here's your video, have a nice day.
Right.
And the longer I do this and the more I do it, I see that and I see the value in it. And then the longer I do this and the more I do it, I have long-term relationships with people. And as much as I've grown, I get to watch them grow. And it's exciting that we're all out here growing and learning together.
Right.
Like, it's kind of corny, but it's real and it's sincere. And it's so exciting. And I get so much joy out of doing it. So I'm really grateful for what I've been able to accomplish. And I can't wait to see what else I get to do. And like, it's fun every day doing it, with its ups and downs. And
Yeah. No, and that's like the purpose behind it, is saying, because there, I think, you could hire somebody to come out and shoot a video for you, and they're like, pay me this and do this, and there you go, and have a nice day. But like, for somebody like you to say, like, here's all these other things that you can do with it, here's what you should do with it. I have people too, like, so a lot of, on the marketing side, what I do is what I call like a managed marketing package. So it's set to say, and there's like, you know, different levels and custom based on what people need. Because people will be like, well, what are your packages or whatever? And I was like, I don't have packages, because everybody doesn't need the same thing. And I'm not going to cookie cutter some services to you. But people say a lot like, oh, do you help with social media? And it's like, yes, I help with social media. Well, can you just do our social media for us? And I'm like, not usually. Usually I'll say no, because there's all these things that work in tandem. And so it's like, if we're just focused on this one thing and everything else, we've got this, you know, kick-ass social media campaign, and your website is garbage. What good is that doing? We've got this like great campaign, and when people come in, your, you know, staff is lazy and horrible and whatever. Like, we are not responding to negative reviews. You're not doing like all these things that work together. And so I try to say, like, I will work with you, but we need to kind of do this whole, you know, even if it's on a smaller scale, but we need to do all these things because all of these work together. And I'll have sometimes they're like, well, maybe we'll just try with this. And we get going, and it's like, nope, what you needed yesterday is not what you needed, you know, tomorrow, or what you need the next day. And, you know, I think especially too, like I said, starting out my business when COVID first hit, it was like pivot was, you know, word of the year, that everything we were doing, you know, for anybody, it was like, we have to stop now and we have to be able to switch gears and we need to do this. But that's just like one example of it. That's how everything is in life. You know, it's like, we're in Illinois, so like snowstorms is a huge example. Like, you've got something planned and the weather changes what you've got going on. Well, your messaging needs to change. You need to change what you're doing here. You need to whatever. You're planning an event and it's not going like you think it needs to, or whatever. Like, you have to be able to adjust and not just be like, well, you know, we had you were hired to just, you know, post some stuff on social media for us. And it's like, yeah, but that's not helping, you know, get necessarily that result that you need. And so I really try to get people to focus on, you know, comprehensive packages, and not even packages, but comprehensive, you know, things. And also the, like, what are you doing? Sometimes people will be like, oh, here, can you do this? And it's like, I can say, and I tell people this, I can say whatever you want, but it doesn't make it true. It doesn't make it like be what your business is about. And so it's like, you know, who are you trying to reach? What are you trying to talk about? What are you trying to establish? And I think there's just a lot of levels. But that's the thing too. It's like, you talked about starting your own business, and like, you're a video guy and you like making video, and I like doing marketing, but there's all these other facets. So like, I have somebody that I work with that handles, you know, helps me with financial stuff, because I have to do that as a business owner. I don't like it. I don't know anything about it. So I'm like, hey, you know this. And so for business owners, it's easy to say, I'm passionate about, you know, I'm just coming as making tables. Only because the tables are part. I'm passionate about making tables, and I like to make tables, but I don't know how to sell these tables or market these tables. And so that's where it's like, I like to be able to come in and I can help you, with that. And so I think people having that understanding of getting the support that they need in the areas that they're not strong in is really important. And like for me, even the financial side, for a while, like I started out, I'm like, shoot, I don't have any money. I've got to do this all myself. And now I'm like, I would spend hours, not really like the financial, but like tax stuff. And I'm like every quarter and I have to turn in these things. And I'm like, now how was it that I did that? And these numbers don't match this and whatever. Where now I'm just like, oh, hey, those are due. Hey, thank you for sending those over. And it's worth every penny to be like, I don't have to deal with this because I don't understand it. I don't know where I got on a way tangent from whatever we were talking about. But
that's great. And you're right. No, you got to wear so many hats. And then you don't have to be the best at every aspect, but you got to be at least competent. You got to at least be able to wear those hats. And like there's so many avenues and approaches to entrepreneurship. It's a challenge for sure.
Because it's not as simple as like I love making tables. I want to make a business out of it. Like there's so much more that you got to
market, you got to administrate, you got to do finances, you got to network, you got to build websites. Speaking of building websites, change gears a little bit before I get you out of here. This is technical and just out of my genuine curiosity. Where do you create your sites on? Are you a WordPress, a Wix?
WordPress.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you write code at all?
I can write some very basic stuff, but I try not to.
I know they make it more user friendly, but yeah, there's a lot to WordPress.
Yeah, there's a lot though that you can do without having to write code, and certainly, and a lot of it I've learned just by default because when I first started my business, I built, I want to say maybe it was a Wix site or a Weebly site because I'm like, I don't know anything about this, and then once I'm like, oh, I figured this out, and I manage a number of websites, and I've learned a lot by doing, and I'm always a fan if I don't know something. I never try to be like, oh, sure, I know how to do that, and like don't. But if I don't know how to do something, to say, okay, I think if this could be beneficial, I want to try to learn, because then I'm like, oh, I learned this. Now this is something I know how to do that I can do in the future. And so, I've built full websites for clients where if you asked me 5 years ago when I'd started, I'd be like, shoot, I can't do that. I think like the first time I opened up the back end of somebody's, I was like, oh, I moved something and I'm like, oh my God, I broke it.
Foolish me, like when I was in school, I don't know. I thought one day I would reach a finish line. I'm like, well, now I know enough to execute and I can just continuously execute. Like I'm good now. I'm trained. And I realized like I've learned to embrace that it's a never-ending learning experience. And if you're not consistently learning, someone else is going to pass you up or you're going to become irrelevant, or like there's always something else to learn, whether it's marketing or networking or just business, and just it is a never-ending process. Mm-hmm. You're never going to reach that finish line.
And there's stuff like I always enjoy learning new things. And then like I'll go to a lot of I don't know, speaker sessions or things, or even solopreneurs group or some of these, and people are talking and it's like, this is all stuff that I know, but I'm like, but this is good. I need the reminder of it. I need somebody to tell me you should be making a list and having these goals and not working on this stuff and pass it off to somebody else and all of this stuff. And I'm like, I've heard this 50 times and I'm still not doing it. And so I always enjoy hearing that and learning something new, because I think there are some people where they're like, oh, I already know everything there is to know.
And I like that you said that too, because I will hear a gem or a jewel of knowledge or something that resonates with me, right? And then just because you hear something, what is it? Knowledge without execution is just entertainment, or there's some better way that they say that. But you can know something, or you can even be doing something, and then just hearing it again or from a slightly different perspective can remind you, oh yeah, I need to focus on this more. Or you're like, dang, I hadn't considered it like that. Or something you've repeatedly heard, it resonates with you differently at different stages in life. Like I'll hear the same message 10 years ago, like I knew that, I've heard that already. But now I'm like, oh, with this new life experience, I hear that exact same thing. It just hits so much different and it has more impact. Or with new experience, you see it through a new lens. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely something to be said for that. Well, before I get you out of here, do you have any goals or anything that you want to? I know you're wanting to bring Eat Local.
Yes.
Is it going to be Eat Local 2.0, or is it just?
It will not. It'll just be Eat Local. I thought about doing, some teaser. Speaking on the market side, like teaser stuff about something big is coming and we're doing this. But then I'm like, my hopes are to get it done pretty soon, but then if I get off track, I'm like, I don't want, people are waiting for this thing that doesn't happen. But that's kind of my big goal. I talked to somebody in one of the groups I'm in, and we talked about, having goals, and I should be better about setting goals. And here are either like my financial goals or the number of businesses I want to have or the whatever. And I've been, again, like I did that for years where I know you need to do this stuff, and haven't said that. And partially because I'm like, it sounds weird. Like I almost want to I had some large clients on the Omnia marketing side that I ended up and I'm totally fine to like part ways to say you are big enough now that you have grown over the, couple years that we worked together, that you need to have somebody full time and dedicated to what you're doing. And I had a couple that were really large so sometimes it's like painful to be like, hey, yeah, we're not going to work together anymore. But to say I need to get rid of these so I can focus more time on doing the 8 Local stuff. And fortunately or unfortunately, like I said, I've gotten some other business, and so I don't really have those gaps like I thought. But my big, long-winded way to say that my focus for 2025, I really want to make on Eat Local. And it's like, if I do it the right way, and if I think in my brain, the things that I want to happen, if they really could, that, the hopes are that could take off and I could start. And I don't really necessarily want to filter out what I have, and I don't want to be like, oh, clients that I have, I'm not going to work with you anymore. But I think there's ways that they could change. I could say I'm not going to take on anything new on that side because I'm going to put my focus on here. And sometimes I think back where I was like, if I know now what I knew then when I started, when I was like, hey, I could start my own business, and I started this marketing company, I could have started Eat Local instead, and that could have been what I started off with. And that probably would have been tricky to do because I wouldn't have it would have taken a while before I'd have that revenue like I would wanted. So I don't know that it would have been sustainable on its own. But, there's a part of me that thinks like, I really wish it was, I'm working on it. I wish it could be done tomorrow the way that I want it to be. And it won't be, but it's like, I have to be patient and say, okay, maybe if it's done here in the next, month or two, and then I can roll it out. And so that's my goal for the year, of like having it done, having it launched, and then having all the conversations of, with everybody about getting the content on there and what they want to do, and then doing all the stuff. It's a big undertaking.
Well, it sounds like you got your hands full.
Yeah.
And I want to revisit that, right? So I'm going to have to get you back in here once Eat Local's 2.0 is out in the world. That's not the name of it. No. But no, yeah, once you move forward with that, and then I look forward to literally, like, seriously, like, oh, I look forward to that. But really, it'll be fun to see. Again, that's what we're here to grow and to see where our progress is, and to see what Eat Local turns into. And I look forward to seeing what you turn that into. Good. Because sounds like that's what your focus is going to be. So I'm going to see what you come up with, Amanda.
I'll see. I'll show you maybe when we're done off camera what I got so far.
Well, I think that'll be a good place to wrap this up.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank you for coming in today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I've loved hearing more about Omnia and Eat Local, and I look forward to just seeing what you continue to do with it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. We're shaking hands.
Jumped out in this fresh gear. Next year was my best year. This year was my flex on. Like a shoe deal with a check on. It might be like a Nike with a